I'm gonna start this interview. I am so honored to be today with RAVI Kamble. He's been an animator in How to Train Your Dragon 3, in Abominable. He's been a lead in Penguins of Madagascar, a supervisor in the Boss Baby family business, and he's worked even in character development for Detective Pikachu back at MPC London. He is one of the biggest animators in the industry, really. I have a lot of acquaintances that have worked with him closely, and a lot of people have told me, like, you gotta interview Ravi. He is spectacular. He's a formidable human being, and we've been talking for months now, so I am so glad that finally we're able to do this. I admire you, and I thank you so much for being here.
Oh my God, I'm feeling so shy, Ilse. This is an amazing introduction. I'm so honored. I was telling you earlier, like your channel has been a huge resource for not only me but for many people. And I tend to, like, sometimes I'm animating and I just want to remind myself of something that I need to just catch up on or I've forgotten, and just to make sure I'm up to date with my work. And I always tap into your channel. There's always some cool stuff that you've covered already. There's so much knowledge. There's so many good guests too that you've had. So, being here, it's a huge honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Ravi. The fact that you're telling me that you watch my channel means a lot. As I was telling you before, I do this out of love for people, and I think the fact that we can share and like teach others the things we know is all about transcendence, and the fact that you're here just blows my mind. And it's great to have a lot of people coming and sharing their experiences, because that is humbling for others, because they understand that yes, we other animators are only human. And one thing that I want to ask you, because this is something very dear to my heart, is have you ever been intimidated by like the complexity of a shot? Like you get the shot and you're like, I'm not sure if I'm even gonna be able to do this.
Jesus, all the time, in every project, almost every time. Like, honestly, it's like this is the beauty, and also the kind of the catch that you have to work with when you're animating. As you know very well, right? Like animation, there's always something new. That's what I love about it. That's why I'm so passionate. Even if, let's say, you casted a shot about a character jumping from one spot to another, and you casted that again 2 years down the line in a different project, it's gonna be different. No matter if the action is a jump, the type of jump, the type of character, the situation in which he's in, and the place, the mechanics of how the steps are gonna happen, everything changes. So there's no repetition, there's no monotony. There can be in certain situations for sure, but if you're really passionate and deep about animating, I think you can find always like a new thing to learn every time, a new angle. So I think in terms of challenges, all the time I can talk about not only like the most complex stuff, like for example Dave the Octopus, which was the villain of the Penguins of Madagascar. That was quite a complex challenge on its own. But I've also had many challenges where it's like a shot that's super short, right? Like a, I don't know, 15 to 20 frame shot. And it can be like the most difficult shot you worked on in a production. It happened to me almost in Dragon 3 once, because there was this shot of it was like I was casted a whole chunk of shots, which involved a lot of like complex mechanics, and there was like there was what was that dragon's name? I forgot. There's a dragon with the four wings, Balka's dragon.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember the name right now, but basically there's this shot happening in a ship. There's like a battle, and this dragon is on a cage, and he comes out and he's firing and everything. So before that, Hiccup is being launched in the air. Like they were trying to rescue the friends. So he's flying with Toothless, and something happens, and he crashes into one of the masts of the ship, and he kind of flies off, and he's like spinning in the air. And that spin was like even less than 15 frames. It was crazy. It was super sharp. but like they were so specific about, no, just make it spin once, make it spin twice, make it spin from the side, make it spin from, like, I want to see his face, I want to see the silhouette of his arm. So there were so many versions I had to go through, and it's just like this tiny shot. And there's like this longer shot where like this dragon with four wings comes out and he's firing everywhere, and the soldiers that are guarding the cage are all running away and escaping, and all that was going through well. And this one shot that was super tiny was taking me so long. So there's challenges that come to you in very unexpected ways as well, depending on the project and depending on the requirements of the animation style. And there's so many components that it makes it exciting. It makes it very challenging for sure. But I think animators all over the world can relate to this kind of situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every time you get a different shot, it's like when people tell me you're a great animator, I'm like, no, because if you give me a fish, or if you give me a horse, or if you give me a dragon, or if you give me a biped, everything is a challenge. So I am new to too many things that I cannot even count, because it's like endless possibilities. One other thing that I wanted to touch upon is your workflow, because I know you have like a very specific workflow that involves a lot of thumbnailing. So first of all, tell me, do you think it is important for animators to be great at drawing, or maybe a little bit? What is your take on drawing as an animator?
People who I've talked to about workflow, actually workflow it's a word that I was obsessed with for many years, and as we animators are, especially when we're starting, we're trying to find ourselves in the type of work we want to do, but also how we want to tackle that work, how we want to structure our animation. And I feel that over the years I've experienced so many different challenges throughout my work that I've managed to develop a little bit of a way to adapt my workflow to certain requirements. But what I talk about mostly is not workflow per se, but more like mindset. I love to talk about mindset in the sense that it makes you more complete to be able to adapt your workflow to a requirement of a shot. So certain people might be very rigorous about, okay, I'm gonna do my blocking in steps, and I'm gonna do the spline pass, and then I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna key only certain controls, and which is great. It keeps you organized, it keeps you structured, and I do that myself a lot of times. But there's also unexpected situations that get thrown at you, and unexpected challenges with certain types of creatures or characters that are more complicated. My obsession with drawing, and again, this is a disclaimer, like I'm not a 2D animator, I'm not like educated in like traditional art background, nothing. Whatever I've learned in 2D, it's like scribbling, on my own, just like just vocational, So I think the importance I do give to drawing, though, is that for me, it's more, it makes you go beyond just visualizing things on your shot or your own work, but it also helps you to even things like when it comes to my experience supervising, I've benefited from being able to draw so that I can give indications to animators, because at the end of the day, animation is visual. Mm-hmm. So being able to draw, and also it goes beyond language barriers too. Either my English not good, or if I'm like in a place like China where I lived for 2.5 years, going beyond the language barrier and just drawing something like a pose or even like a simple arrow and just a very rough scribble of a character describing the intention you want in that particular frame, it's very, very valuable. Or even giving notes to other departments like rigging or modeling if you want a certain shape or a certain control placed somewhere. I think it's so important to be able to visualize and make tangible whatever is in your head as much as you can. because at the end of the day, that's where our efficiency grows, right? The faster
Right.
you get whatever, you can be very clear in what you want in your head. But then if you don't have the means to materialize that, it's tough. It's very difficult.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but that's not to say that I don't draw all the time. I do a lot of 2D, but it's not like, even if it's like a very naturalistic, subtle acting shot, I'm not gonna draw per se, because I find other means more efficient, like video reference and stuff. So I tend to I don't describe myself as this one particular way of working. I tend to think, okay, what does the shot require, and just analyzing that, I'll tailor my workflow. Sometimes I've even done like I've gone from blocking in step to layering. It's a bit of a hybrid for me. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I totally get it. Sometimes you have to animate props and you cannot have them in stepped because you would lose the path or
Yeah.
things like that. So yeah, you kind of have to adapt. You have to be a chameleon when it comes to animation and take a little bit of a workflow that you use frequently and learn from other people's workflow and not get stuck, right? It's a very complex thing. And
There will be like certain things that might be suitable to the way you work. That's like habits, right? Like that's totally fine. You don't have to like break your head. I think at the beginning it's important when you're learning animation to have a structure and get exposed to all these different ways of working and making sure that you know how to execute those type of workflows, and then you slowly take and adapt. But I think I put emphasis on the mindset. Like when I talk about mindset, it's kind of like analyzing the sensibilities, the style of the project, the just having that readability on what the director is launching you on, and how your supervisors, what are the requirements that the supervisors expect from that shot, and just developing those more additional skills, and then trying to digest all that, and then just set your priorities. Okay, so is this gonna be more about is this gonna get me there with a good pose, or is it gonna be more about the movement and the timing? It's going to be about the weight of the character that's going to sell what they want. It's just developing those interpersonal skills and that additional, readability on what's needed, the sensibility of the project, basically.
your English is top notch.
Oh,
I just want to comment on how we were talking before the interview in Spanish, and we were like, "Are we even gonna do that switch in English?" And I think you're doing great.
Wow, that's so cool. But I like my English. I mean, honestly, I learned very late. Like I would have English classes in high school,
Really?
back in Spain and everything. But like I remember, my ambition to travel was pretty important, but I would always feel hindered by my English. It was really limited. Luckily, my parents come from India, so sometimes we talk in English even at home, or we met relatives from India and everything. So I would be practicing all the time, but it wasn't till I came to the UK that I realized, oh shoot, I don't even understand what they're saying. Their accent is so, tricky and everything. So, yeah, over the years, I mean, I do encourage as well to learn English in a way, because all the software I use is in English anyway. So, yeah, for those who are even going in that path of, I'm struggling with my English, I really recommend it's worth to go through that.
Absolutely. And you speak a lot of, you have a lot of like different expertise in different languages, maybe not expert level, but you speak a little bit of Mandarin, a little bit of Hindi as well,
Oh,
even more,
Jesus.
a little bit of French, Spanish, obviously, perfectly well. English, it's like, wow, it's such a tutti frutti out of everything. Yeah, that's really cool. I think in the industry, that's so much fun because it's so international. I love when I'm working and I can turn around and speak French to my French like co-workers, and we understand each other, and then I turn and speak English, and then I turn and speak Spanish. It makes me feel like yeah, I'm doing this, and
Yeah.
and it's nice because people open to you in a different way when you speak their language, you know, which is not necessarily the case. I mean, some of my best friends are like from India or from like languages that I don't speak at all. But yeah, it's always fun to kind of try to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I that's so funny that you mentioned that, you know, people that hear you speaking their language, they appreciate it, and it's true. It happened to me in China. By the way, my Chinese is horrendous. I don't speak like really well, but you know, there's certain things you have to like learn as basics at least to get by. So those I had to like learn by force, right, to get by in China. But no way. But they would appreciate, like my friends and even like my neighbors or whatever. They would appreciate the fact that I try.
Absolutely.
So I had a lot of fun, you know, and you put yourself in situations that otherwise would never happen if you don't try, you know, like
True.
I made friends this way, like just by blabbing some, you know, trying to learn their language and be in their comfort zone, you're all of a sudden building a relationship. So I find it really cool. Same with French. I barely learned French at school. But then I've been exposed to, you know, all these like crazy, amazing animators from France, and at DreamWorks and other places too, and they're always like talking between themselves in French, and I would just like just in the middle of the conversation, I would just blab something. And be like, oh, vous parlez français? Un petit peu, like just mess around. It's just fun. You make friends that way, you know. So
Absolutely. Yeah,
so,
100%. So when you were in China, okay, tell me a little bit of how it was for you, the transition of being a 3D animator and then becoming a lead, which happened very early in your career, and then jumping to supervisor and all that in different countries, and like a very multicultural experience, and very challenging, I suppose, because you don't have the same needs as an animator and then as a lead and then as a supervisor. So how was that for you? How does leadership affect the way you work?
oh wow! So that was quite. I mean, even I sometimes think about it and like, I don't know how it happened. To be honest, it's so. It was a mix of things. Mostly, I mean, I consider myself very lucky to have been exposed to that kind of experience because it was a chance that I took at, you know, trying my best to really do good work so that, you know, my supervisors could notice that. And it turned out like my head of animation at the time in India, this is where it started. In India, I had animated before in other companies all over the world and everything, but I think in India is where my career really stepped up and took off. And it was thanks to who I consider one of my greatest mentors, my head of animation, Olivier Stafilas. He's now a director at Sony, and before that he was head of animation at DreamWorks and at Base FX in China. He's a great leader, and he has this virtue of identifying people's best skills and really pushing that. You know, and I learned a lot from him, and he, you know, if he's the kind of person that he would really give you a lot of support if you know, if you do great work. So that was my kind of dynamic with him. Like I wanted to impress him all the time, and you know, and I had a lot of like help and support from my peers. I had a great team around me, and I learned so much. So what happened was I was casted to work at first in the project as you know, I was just helping out in some character tests for the minion octopi in the film, and that was being led by one of the seniors in the industry now, Sami Fessi. He's a great animator, and he was basically supervising those characters and developing them, and I was just giving him a hand because I knew Sami from before. We had worked together back in Spain. So Olivier thought, it would be good to pair us both, and we worked together. And turned out that the tests were going well, and Olivier started to give me a little bit more responsibility just to see what I was capable of, and I rolled into production. Till then, I was just an animator, a feature animator, and then as the production went on, and Olivier, luckily, everything just was going well, and he kept liking my work. Eventually, the big villain, Dave, he was coming out from modeling to rigging, and we needed to test him earlier in pre-production. So there was no one available, and Olivier saw, okay, this guy is doing some good work with the minions, and maybe I'll just give him a chance to do the bigger octopus. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, are you sure about this? And he's like, yeah, just do your thing. Just, come up with cool ideas, test out the rig. Any issues you have, just, report them and everything. And I had never done any of that in my career. I've never even interacted with other departments, right? Like, that's a big thing. I didn't even know the jargon, right? Like, I don't know, the rotation axes and the joint placement and all this stuff that I had to really learn on the go. And it was amazing. Like, Olivier just made me feel very comfortable, and I think that was a huge factor, like taking that support, embracing it, and then just making the best out of it. And this is something I tell people, like, don't, like, even something that you don't expect that might give you enough rewards, or it might seem to be like very small thing, just like do your best. Like, always do your best. Like, you never know who is looking at that, what's gonna come out of it. Many relationships can be built because they will see how hard you worked on it. Even if it's like a small shot of, I don't know, like a hand grabbing something or whatever, it's gonna, if you do it well, if people see your dedication, they're really gonna appreciate it, and you're gonna grow like massively. So that's kind of how I took it, right? Like, I would like take every single little opportunity. I'll try to make the best I can. And then, and eventually, like, the characters started to shape up. We needed like post libraries, and we needed the rig to be debugged and go through various iterations. And the personality was being written in storyboards. It was very, very challenging, very organic. The process was super parallel with story and writing and just coming up with ideas. And then, like, luckily, production came, and the first shot came of the character. And because I ended up spending a lot of time with the rig already, I seemed to be more familiar with the little tricks and tips that I would use with the character, so I could share it with people. And that's how kind of the role built up. It was never, I don't know if it was meant to be, if it was written in the books. I just... But it just worked out really well, and yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. And then there were many challenges on the way, of course, but it was one of my, till today, it's probably one of my career highlights. That character is so complicated, but at the same time so creative if you pull it off. It was really fun.
Yeah, you earned an Annie Award nomination for that. It was it was pretty fantastic. Yeah, it was not only very technical but very stylized, which is a difficult combination if you ask me. And you touched upon a very real thing to me, which is that when you have a shot, just give it your best, because you want to look at that shot 2 years later when it's rendered and it looks beautiful in the big screen and be like, I did it, and be proud of it forever. Because if you don't do something properly, you will, be in regret the rest of your life, because it's already there. So that is a cool thing about our job, how transcendent it is. And it's not always like fun and games. We also make a lot of mistakes and learn a lot from the things that are maybe not ideal that happen to us. Can you tell us a little bit about your biggest mistakes, or things that you, if you could go back in time, you maybe would have done differently?
Oh gosh, so many things, so many. And even recently, right? Even lately, I make a lot of mistakes. I'm not gonna lie, and I think it's good to let people know that we are, like we're all humans. And I think I can tell you this story, like it's super clear. One of my favorite stories to tell. So fine, I was talking about, achieving this thing in India, DreamWorks India, with Dave the Octopus, and I was super happy, super proud. I don't know how it happened, but I got this Annie Award nomination, and like, wow, I guess I know how to animate, right? It's amazing. And then, I was very lucky. I followed Olivier's steps, and he was basically like setting up the branch of Oriental DreamWorks in China, the DreamWorks branch in China. So I went there with him, and it was quite a challenge to build up, the animation studio it was literally from scratch. Like, there was a infrastructure in place in terms of the physical building, but the pipeline was bare bones. There's nothing there. So we had to like come up with, tools and talking to different departments, and then training for the animation team. There was a lot of juniors in China, and it was quite an experience. And I don't know, I think I guess I self-assess it now, and there was a bit of a self-confidence that was a bit too high at that time for me. I was like, oh yeah, I can do this, I can do that. So what happened, there was one of the training sessions that Olivier organized was with the great master Christophe Serran from DreamWorks. So the training consisted on learning about walks, like walk cycles, right? With a biped character. Which I say this, and it sounds like a pretty standard school exercise that you get to do in any animation school these days, and yeah, exactly.
That's tricky.
That's where I'm going with this. So I thought this. I was like, okay, I can, because at first I was like actually assigned to do some development on a project, and somehow I got grabbed into doing the training as well with the other animators. So I was like, are you sure? It's just taking me time from the development schedule, and they were like, no, you have to do it as well. So I was like, okay, cool. It's just a walk cycle. And, it was all like cross-site. So Christophe was in LA, I think at the time. He would get sent all our animation work, all the clips with the walk cycles, the 4 different views and everything. And he had to review them, but...
Ooh, like a little test thing, like homework.
Exactly, and I assume it was all anonymous as well. Like, he wouldn't recognize a lot of the names, because he never worked with most of the people. So it was pretty fair, right? In that way, like he's just judging the visuals, what it is, the visuals for. My turn came up, and he was like, see, this is the common mistakes that people make. And he started to like point every single thing. And I was like, oh God, what the hell is wrong with me? Like I'm so like not there at all, like the basics of a walk cycle and all that. And just like little things like the weight shift of the hips, or the contacts, like how the heel is getting planted, and like the typical very cartoony approach to it where you're really lifting the legs, where actually legs, when it's like more naturalistic, tend to be a bit lazier. You tend to play with the fact that you want to be efficient with your strides and all that stuff. And I was like, oh God, what the hell? So, and this is pretty, this was in 2015, probably 2016. So it can happen to anybody, you have to be on your feet, and it just teaches you that. To me, sometimes animation feels like sports, where you have to be fit, you have to go to the gym, you have to train. So it's a bit like that, like an animation gym. Yeah, I can go on, there's so many other stories like that. But yeah, that's one that I like to share.
That one was awesome. It talks a lot about the craft that we're doing, because it can be so humbling to be like, I've done this before, like I get this, like it's gonna be fine. At least maybe you're not thinking in your head like, I nailed this, or I'm the best at it, but you think like, I got that under control, and then you see it from a different light and you realize that you just don't know anything. Animation is so complex. So it's so fun that you're telling me this, because a lot of people come to me and they're like, I think I'm never gonna be an animator because I cannot nail a walk cycle. And I tell them like, do you know walk cycles are one of the hardest things to do when you're an animator? Yeah, all those body mechanics and weight shifts and yeah, foot plants and peel-offs. Oh my god. So that's a great story. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. It talks about how humble you are and how humble we should all be and never assume that we know it all because things change a lot. So yeah, thank you.
It's hard, and being humble. I don't know. I guess I am. People say that all the time, but I think it's important to practice the fact that there may be something you don't know, like giving that room to yourself to. First of all, because it takes away a bit of the pressure, right? Like I have to know. It's no, maybe you can make the mistake and it's fine. But also because there's always something to learn. There's always something to grow and go towards in a direction. So otherwise, that's when people stop growing, when you think you know everything.
Yeah, and one other thing that happens pretty often is that like juniors teach things to supervisors, for example. In a work production environment, it's like, oh, I didn't know that because our software is so huge and complex. And yeah, this is like a you never stop learning kind of thing. So the fact that anyone can teach you anything and be open to the fact that someone who with way less experience than you can even be the one who tells you like that is not working in your animation. And yeah, I think that's beautiful about our craft. And talk to us a little bit about like character development and all the things that you had to do in Detective Pikachu and how has that impacted your career?
Wow. Yeah. So character development is probably my favorite thing in animation. I dare to say even more than like production shots. I love developing characters. And that, I mean, character development can mean many things in different projects and different studios. What I've been exposed to was mostly coming from DreamWorks, where you're working in the pre-production stage before the movie starts. You're mostly assigned, let's say, a character, and you have to come up with animation tests. You have to debug the rig. You have to work with other departments to steer the character towards the vision that everybody has, especially the director. Exploration, which I love. That's my favorite stage. Even like when if people ask me what's your favorite stage in doing a shot, that's like the blocking and the thumbnailing pass. That's where I really enjoy it. To me, animation is a lot about ideas rather than the finessing. And I mean that's cool too, obviously. And depending on the project you're in, if you're in a project that requires that very grounded realism and naturalism and the micro details, and that might be the selling point of your shot, then yeah, it's very enjoyable and it's very rewarding. But the ideas and the choices you make, especially in performance, that I love to explore that stuff. Sometimes I'm too guilty to explore too much. So, but I basically character development entails a lot of exploration and also coming up with like a language for your character. Like I emphasize the importance of model sheets, for example. You can have a pose library as well, and a pose library needs to be very strong because that's what people are going to use that in production. But there's also a value in having visual model sheets that people can have, to look at and understand the shape language of the character right away. It's like a Bible that you have as a reference. And
yeah,
for
for anyone who's like not for someone who doesn't have a lot of experience in animating in production, what Ravi is referring to is that sometimes when you have a model of a character and you're posting it and animating, for example, the face, you can go a little over the top or just make a weird facial expression or body like kind of angle pose that doesn't look on model. So it looks a little bit not the way it's supposed to look like. And that is what the pose library is for. We use a lot of pre-defined shapes that already a lot of animators made previously, so you kind of have like a base for, okay, this is working, this looks appealing for this special character, and if you get past it, it's gonna look a little bit weird. It's going like too much in, it doesn't look like him anymore. Okay, yeah, just as a side note, please continue, Ravi.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful explanation. And also to add to that, like with model sheets, what happens is with the post library, sometimes, and again, it depends on the style of the show, but sometimes you get in situations with a certain angle and a certain attitude of a character that even the post library is not quite there, because people, when it comes to post libraries, people tend to work a little bit like automated, right? Like, okay, I'll just dial a little bit of this smile here and a little bit of that brow shape there, and maybe I'll grab the arm of this particular pose and the legs of this particular animated motion clip. That's how we call it at DreamWorks, by the way. The motion clips are I think the animation cycles that you save in the library. So I'll take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it should be on model, right? But it's not quite. So you need that extra study of building that sensibility towards this particular character, because it has a certain language in terms of shape or attitude or choices, or and this is the job of a character lead. You are essentially building like a Bible, or nowadays we do it like wikis, like a wiki page of a character. You collect a lot of references, actors or even other movies, or clips of people doing things that you want to implement in the character as a particular gesture he always does or whatever. You also analyze the shape language, so the shape of the mouth corner when that character smiles might be specific to that character in a certain way. Again, this is where drawing helps, because you're doing draw-over, so with that you're explaining, well, the apex of that lip should be here and the teeth should be posed in silhouette this way, blah blah blah. You can get into very nitty-gritty details, and that combination of a lot of study and research and just giving as much as you can to the animators so that they can follow through, I think that's what makes the development of a character successful, because then they can really spend their time learning all these things, and they know, even if they struggle, they have a reference point to someone to go to, the character lead. Because sometimes it happens in certain projects where you cannot even afford character development. You just like build a rig and boom, you're just going. And it's just tough, because everybody is discovering their own little things with the character, and there's a leeway to inconsistency. I think character development it's something that I've been luckily exposed to, and I would strongly recommend it to animators to try pursue it, because it makes me feel in a way like I'm not an actor. You are, Ilse. You're a great actor, so you know this. But it makes me feel like an actor, because I'm embracing a role. I'm not changing my role from being Jim Carrey to being Anthony Hopkins in the same movie. You see, like I'm always stuck with this one character, which a lot of people might think, oh, I don't like that. I just want to be stuck with. I don't want to be stuck with one character or whatever.
Yeah, some
but
people
to me,
like jumping around.
Exactly. Some people like variety, and that's also great. To me, truly, if I'm involved in the character development process, I really want to own as much as I can of that character, and really, I feel like I don't even feel like I know the character till the very end. That's the
that happens all the time. Oh my god.
All the time.
Yeah.
So, and then for the project in MPC, Detective Pikachu, that was an amazing experience. That was first of all my first gig at VFX. I had never done VFX at the time, and I had done this like very stylized and broad octopus animation on Penguins of Madagascar and some other projects. I worked in China, and it was all like very feature cartoony animation. And I was like having this dilemma, this crisis of, am I gonna be able to do like more naturalistic animation? But I have this thing where I hate to be typecasted. Like it's just my thing. I like to be able to push myself and see if I can adapt to different types of projects. So this was my thing, of my own challenge of, okay, I really want to try VFX just to see if I'm capable of doing it. And it turned out to be amazing as an experience, because it was not like I didn't do work for the actual film, but I helped in the character development phase, which was a little different from DreamWorks in the sense that we were assigned to be part of a, like what they call like a brain trust sort of thing. Like it was just me and two more animators working directly with the director, which is, I guess it's very rare in VFX, right? Like very rare. So we were like working with the director, and there was also a previous team from, I believe it was the third floor. Previous. So what we would do which this was super fun. There was like a huge database already of available rigs for the film and assets and stuff. And we would just like go through the list. We'll have the pages of the script and we'll just read through and find, oh, there's this cool fight happening in this scene. How would that look like? Let's animate it. So we just create a shot in Maya. We just dump the rigs in there. We create like a proxy background and we just animate something that we would imagine that could go in the movie, which would help to explore, the not only like animation wise the characters themselves, but also the way of shooting the thing, which was incredible. That was awesome. And I had the chance to work a lot with Mewtwo, which was the
Oh
villain.
yeah, Mewtwo. Mewtwo was my childhood.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So I had a lot of fun with that, like exploring all his like telekinetic powers and how he floats in the air, and it's all very realistic. So you're experimenting with the weight and just the way the character would move, being so stylized because it's Pokemon, but having all that extra layer of being aware of the physicality and spacing and all these things. And it was an incredible experience. I really treasure like how the reactions of the director and certain shots I animated were wonderful, and I was like, wow, I wish I could have done more of that. It was so cool, and that it was very useful, for the film. They ended up we could even pitch certain ideas that were not quite there in the script, and sometimes you would try and risk it and make mistakes, obviously, and it wouldn't go, but certain times it was pretty useful. That was the gig I had with MPC. It was short but sweet.
complex project because, as you're saying, it's not easy to grab a world that's completely cartoony and stylized and then making it look good with a hyper-realistic world. It's such a challenge, and that is something I really enjoy about VFX, being able to merge those worlds and do animation that looks, yes, as realistic as possible, and sometimes also stylized. Such interesting things. And yeah, that's amazing. To wrap this up, I think we've been here for 50 minutes already, and I don't want to take a lot of your Sunday. So maybe like just quick tips, like really you can say anything, just one simple quick thing for example, what would it be? For eye animation. Give us like one quick tip of your workflow.
Oh, Jesus. For like animating eyes?
Anything. Just one thing that really helps your workflow.
Wow. Draw. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Like drawing, it's something I encourage, but it's not like, oh, you have to draw. It's not like that. I think there's so many geniuses out there that don't draw, and it's not. Like, it depends. Something that helps me a lot, I guess, is think of, even if you're provided like a layout of a shot, for example, or a storyboard or whatever. Think of, even before blocking, try to do a layout pass yourself with the shot. I think that's something that helps me a lot. Just take like the global control and just block out like a very basic choreography, and what that gives me, it's first of all, like I'm trying to verify, because sometimes it's the nature of certain projects. Sometimes you're going very fast, and the physical space and the geography that's in the layout in CG might be a little cheated, or might not be convenient for something of a strong idea that you want to portray. So having to force yourself to redo like a layout pass based on your little planning before, like let's say you just thumbnailing, or you did like some video reference and stuff. Trying to do that little layout pass just to figure out the geography, the space, the staging, how you're framing your characters, because that's something that I notice, and that's where drawing also I think helps me personally. I value the fact that I can kind of tap into the angle in which I'm shooting the character, right? Like there's an aesthetic value on how you showcase a pose or an attitude or the distance between characters, how emotionally that can convey something different. So I think drawing tends to help with that, and also just doing like a little staging pass where even simple things like with quadrupeds, for example, there's a certain timing on the steps if it's like a big dragon, and they give you like this storyboard or this layout that it's like super fast and he has to go from A to B, and you're like, well, it's a very heavy animal and it's walking, it's not like it's running, it's walking in the shot. That timing doesn't quite work in the layout, so you need to like try it, pitch it, really block it as a layout pass, and make sure that you lock out all that geography, because otherwise you're going to struggle for the rest of the shot. And also make sure the controls are aligned accordingly so that you don't mess up with gimbal locks and weird rotation issues and you're not counter animating. Yeah, that's something.
Wow, that was a complex answer.
I just improvised. Yeah.
That was cool. I was expecting like do the darts this long, but you talked about like layout and going in a shot. I loved it. That was
that's
my
funny.
question,
like
actually.
The dart thing was it's funny because a lot of people say different things, so I'm like
but what you just said actually like encompasses the way you see and you tackle a shot. You're given something and you put it in like perspective, you check it in 3D, you see if everything's working, how the camera is positioned, and what relation among the characters is gonna work better towards like the angle of the camera, the relationship among them, the space. So wow, that was very interesting.
It's a subject that I'm interested in, and I know if you talk about other mediums, like I have not worked in games, but I know that in games you really need to be accurate in 3D. So they might, I don't know, you might be able to correct me, but there might be conversations where things like silhouette to camera or cheating might not be allowed as much in video games, or probably not at all. So it depends on what type of stuff you're working on, but I believe that if you are working something cinematic, and even in VFX, I mean that's something I really value VFX animators a lot. They're some of them I met at NPC is so good to be able to layer all that realism and still be appealing or aesthetically pleasing. When you watch it, it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
And you see their curves and how they're kind of dirty, but everything works so well and it looks so realistic. Yeah, it's insane. And as you say, that is very nice, that you don't want to be just encapsulated into like, I am this kind of animator, but to be open to a lot of things and try different challenges. I think that's great. And I would encourage a lot of people who hire and who give us challenges as animators to don't just give us one challenge, but be open to give us more, because the more styles you animate, like you were saying, when I started working at video games after coming from a full CG, background of films, sometimes VFX and sometimes feature, it was quite challenging to animate in perspective. And one thing that still like drives me insane, and it's so epic for me, is that when you are animating for games, you are showing 4 or 5 cameras every time that you are submitting a shot for dailies. And yeah, it's crazy. And like you
can't hide.
You will get notes being like, this hand is not in silhouette in this camera. And that is still shocking to me today, because you are rotating the character. I mean, from my understanding, it's like from one camera you're not gonna have the perfect silhouette because you are turning it. Well, no, that doesn't work that way. So yeah, it's complex, like figuring the mechanics out without cheating at all. And also having like different video games, because sometimes they're too realistic as well, and it would work like an NPC kind of vibe where you have an hyper-realistic environment, or another one where it's a very stylized thing from all angles working, smear frames working from every single angle. Oh my god, you have so many challenges. So
that's very, very challenging. And I admit it, I do cheat. Depends on the project, right? I'm not gonna cheat in something like How to Train Your Dragon because it's so physically accurate spacing needs to be working really well, because the other thing you need to keep in mind is other departments. You don't want to screw them over. You want to, you know, all of a sudden over one frame, like spinning 360 degrees and getting all these weird behaviors. You need to be clean. But there is times where if something is stylized, very graphic, it's following a particular aesthetic that is reminiscent to, I don't know, like, for example, Boss Baby is a good example. Boss Baby 2. The character I was supervising was the villain, Dr. Armstrong. Very cartoony, very broad. His design was very much inspired by Ward Kimball's work. One of the 9 Old Men, Ward Kimball, who did a lot of the Alice in Wonderland, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, and he did even, I think is it Smee from Peter Pan? Like Captain Hook's, the
right
chubby
hand
guy. The right hand,
I remember.
And Jiminy Cricket, and all these characters that have this if you analyze his work, he has a very particular way of drawing them, with like this very curvy lip shape, and the eyes are very rounded, and the eyebrows are always like favoring the curvature of the top lid, and there's all these little things that you find that to capture all that and to really push it, like push the lip in silhouette of a certain, you have to break it. You turn around the camera and it's, whoa, what's the lip doing? It's just out here. But you have to do those things, but within reason. You don't want to. I do apologize to the character effects team and lighting and everybody, because I did push the buttons there with that project.
But that is amazing.
The head of CFX, Matthias, he was a great sport. He was a really, really cool person to work with, and he wanted us to push things and sculpt on top and everything. So it's like it depends on many factors on the project. Again, like in something like Abominable, where you have this Yeti that's full of very realistic fur, I'm not gonna do that. It's gonna,
Yeah, it's about not breaking the chain of production, not hurting the line of production, but also knowing where and when you can go a little bit off the rail and do some, more audacious things and trying to go off script a little. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. You are an awesome animator. I hope to have you later on the show, or even like talk in our Patreon community as well. They are awesome. There are a lot of very keen animators, very eager to learn, and it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ravi.
Thank you. It's,
really.
I'm very honored, and anytime I'll be happy to do this again. And it's amazing. Keep doing the great work with your channel, and I'll hope to see you soon.
Yeah, I hope we work together in the future. That'd be great to see all of your method and understand the way you thumbnail and you do your workflow. I think you have a lot of power in the industry as somebody who has done very particular things, and it's great to just see how lovely and your nice attitude. So yeah, I appreciate it a lot. Thank you for being here, Ravi, and I send you a big hug. Bye, Ravi. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.